Please put your hands together and welcome Dr. Michael Brenner.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Is this thing on? Yes? Maybe? Good. Make a little noise, PRPS. Come on. Let's get that volume up in the projector, please. Turn that up. Yes. Make a little noise, people. Yes. Wow. What's up with the pirate thing? What is that? Man, this is such a huge room. This is wonderful, packed with people. I'm so delighted to have been asked to be your keynote speaker tonight. We're gonna have some fun. You ready to have some fun? Now, some of you I know in the room, right? Raise your hand if you know me from past 4 people. Okay. Where are the musicians in the room? Make a little noise, musicians. All right. Well, in addition to this work that I do, I'm also a musician. This is me playing the saxophone there on the left. That's the tenor, the soprano in the middle, and a little flute on the right there. Now, these photos are kind of old, so I'm going to show you, I think, a more recent photo, if I may. Yeah, so just took that one last week. It is true that all of my heroes are musicians, not really athletes or actors. I've been playing music since I was a little kid. So that is my passion, my joy. In addition to doing this, that was filmed at the Borgata in Atlantic City a few years ago. I was saying all my heroes are jazz musicians or musicians in general. Let's see how many of these musicians you can name. Miles Davis, Chuck D, Public Enemy, Mozart, James Brown, Prince. Who's that? Oh, Jimi Hendrix. Right, Bob Marley, Angus Young, Billie Holiday, Eddie Van Halen, Charlie Parker, John Coltrane. The one thing, it doesn't matter if you've heard of these people or not, the one thing they all have in common is that they're able to connect with an audience in a very powerful and potent way. How many of you have ever been to a concert where the artist just, you felt that they were singing or playing just for you? Raise your hand. Right? You could be up in the nosebleeds at, I guess it was the old Veterans Stadium, whatever they're calling it these days, Lincoln Financial Field, and you just feel like, wow, that artist is singing or playing just for me. I call that striking the right chord, striking the right chord. When musicians strike the right chord, they play in a way that just, you can just feel it in your heart and your spirit. It just galvanizes you, it energizes you, it fills you with joy. But you don't have to be a musician to strike the right chord. You can strike the right chord every day at work, no matter what your role is. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about how work teams can play in harmony and strike the right chord with each other, with their stakeholders, with the community, okay? And we're going to explore that this evening. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to use a musical metaphor. A musical metaphor. This is a what? A picture of a symphony orchestra, right? Anybody like classical music? Yeah, a lot of you. I love classical music. I was raised on classical music. The thing with an orchestra, though, is if you think about it, it's all about predictability. There's not a lot of opportunity to improvise when the score written by Beethoven or Bach or Mozart is right there in front of you. You have to play with precision. If you put on Orchestra A's concert of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, it's probably going to sound a lot like Orchestra B's version of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, okay? It's about being predictable. It's about playing the notes as written. It's about perfect execution, okay? Now, when I was learning this stuff, a lot of speakers use the orchestra as a metaphor for work teams. And that's cool. But I think a more appropriate metaphor, perhaps, is the jazz band. The jazz band. Now, I discovered jazz when I was a little kid, and it changed me on a molecular level. I was never the same afterwards. But I want you to notice the difference between what a jazz band is all about and what an orchestra is all about. Because a jazz band is not about perfection, precision, and predictability. Au contraire, a jazz band is about unpredictability, never playing the same song or solo exactly the same way twice. It's about taking risks and adapting to whatever emerges in the moment. Why? Because it's largely an improvisational art form. Those jazz musicians, pianists, saxophone players, trumpet players, when they solo, they're making that stuff up in real time. And they'll tell you, I'm not really sure what I'm going to play next. Leadership in a jazz band, unlike an orchestra, where leadership is sort of centered on the conductor. I call it fluid leadership. I step into the spotlight to play a solo, and then I step back, someone else steps up and plays a solo. It's much more fluid. It's hard to identify a leader in a jazz band. It's a different concept of leadership. We jazz musicians embrace spontaneity, possibility, and yes, even mistakes. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Mistakes. You can't make mistakes in an orchestra, but you can make mistakes in a jazz band, and it's okay. And so what I want to share with you tonight, pulling from that metaphor of the jazz band, I call them the 3 C's of jazz bands, great jazz bands, and great teams. Change, creativity, and communication. And if you leave here in about an hour or so and you feel differently about these 3 C's, and you're able to introduce one thing to your team that's going to make a difference, I will consider this time well spent. Let's talk about change. There's a great quote here from Ken Robinson. You could watch him on YouTube, his TED Talks. Well-known author. He said, in our time, we have released a totally new social force, a stream of change so accelerated that it influences our sense of time, revolutionizes the tempo of daily life, and affects the very way we feel the world around us. Raise your hand if you're feeling that relentless change in your life. Let me see your hands. Yeah, the pace of change is astronomical. Maybe you're feeling like this little girl, not with water crushing you in the face, but with information and data and demands being put on you from bosses and managers and colleagues and your constituents and stakeholders. And here's the problem, folks. In a world that is rapidly changing, we are creatures of habit. We like things that are comfortable and familiar. Back when we were going to work regularly, now a lot of us work from home, how many of you took the same exact route to work every day? How many of you order your Starbucks coffee the exact same way every time? How many of you, when you sit down, say at the beginning of a workshop or a class, never deviate from that initial chair? I have students that come and sit down first night of class, and they're in the exact same seat the last night of class. We like things that are familiar and comfortable, but I'm telling you, pulling from the world of the jazz band, we need to get over that. Things in life are not predictable. We have to develop the skills and the competencies to adjust, to flex, to be adaptable, just like a jazz band. And so we look for predictability. Predictability. We establish rules that limit our behavior, constrain our ability to self-express, right? How many of you are Pink Floyd fans out there? Anybody? Well, you know what this is from, right? And people start to conform, like they don't feel that they have the opportunity to really show up with their whole selves at work. And they just get through the day, and then they get up the next day and do it again, and get up the next day and do it again, and get up the next day and do it again, and pretty soon, comfortably numb. How many of you know somebody in your career that was comfortably numb? Right? They say that 1 out of 3 workers in 2023 are comfortably numb, checked out, disengaged, just showing up and going through the motions for a paycheck. 1 in 3. So I want you to look at the person to your left. Now I want you to look to the person at your right. And if it's neither of them, Houston, we have a problem. When we are comfortably numb, ladies and gentlemen, we make really bad decisions like, hey, this is a really innovative approach, but I'm afraid we've never tried it before. For a lot of us, the last time we were comfortable with change was, that was the last time that we really embraced and appreciated a change. And yet we know that the same old thinking yields what? The same old results. And if you don't believe me, ask somebody who knows. At one time, Blockbuster was the king or queen of the home video market. How many of you went to Blockbuster on Friday or Saturday night, right? I know I did. It's the best night of the week. I went in, I was like, wow, look at these thousands of videos. I haven't seen Friday the 13th, part 9. And then a hungrier company with a bold, innovative new idea shellacked Blockbuster. What was the name of that company? Raise your hand if you have a Netflix account. Look around the room. My goodness. Now here's the jazz metaphor, because I told you we'd be pulling from the world of jazz music tonight. Miles Davis said it's not about standing still and becoming safe. If anybody wants to keep creating, they have to be about change. I've been in this line of work for over 20 years, and I champion the ability and the willingness to try new things, to change. Because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. And in 2023, that ain't gonna cut it. And I know that there are people out there that want to do bold, new, exciting, innovative things in your organization and sometimes feel stifled. The thing with jazz that I love is it's about change. Change is in its DNA. If you start back when jazz began, it's evolved and mutated through all of these different styles through the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. It's restless. It's always seeking the next thing. It doesn't rely on the past, on the status quo. And there's another aspect about change that I want to share with you when it comes to jazz. How many of you know what these are? What are these depictions of? Chords. A chord is a series of notes played at the same time, right? Now, I want you to listen to this solo by John Coltrane, one of the greatest saxophone players who ever lived. The arrow is going to move to indicate the chord changes on the piano. And listen to how fleet and flexible and agile John Coltrane is with these incredibly quick chords coming at him at a very rapid pace. Check this out. Each letter is a different chord on the piano. And he's just flying through that like it was nothing. Wouldn't we want to be as agile, as fleet, as flexible as John Coltrane? Well, we can. We can. I want you to listen to Bobby McFerrin. How many of you know Bobby McFerrin, right? It's a lot of fun. Check out what he says, and then we're going to experiment a little bit and see if we can build upon what Bobby is saying here.
I became fascinated with the art of improvisation, which to me simply is motion. Improvisation is motion, which means that you start singing and you keep going. That's all. Now, all of the theory, if you're studying theory and harmony and all that kind of stuff, that's all comes into play later. But the first thing you must learn how to do is to open your mouth and sing and keep going. That's it. And anybody can do that, right? Kids do it. They know nothing about theory. They know nothing about scales and modes yet. The more knowledge that you have, eventually you use that stuff. But in the beginning, the most courageous thing you do is to set yourself a goal. I'm going to sing for 5 minutes. I'm going to sing for 10 minutes. You start and you keep going. Now, I can tell you 2 minutes down the line, if you're not used to doing this, you're going to want to stop. Every molecule in your being is going to be screaming to stop for several reasons. It doesn't sound good. You have no idea what you're doing. Your scales are wrong. Your intonation is lousy, etc., etc. You'll have your own personal reasons for stopping, but you mustn't stop. You just keep going.
Use your hands, people. Yeah. So building on what Bobby McFerrin said, right? Improvisation is just motion. You just keep going. No matter what life throws at you, you don't stop. You're always trying new things. You're exploring possibilities. You're asking, how might we do this? What if we tried that? It's so clear to me in doing this work for as long as I've been doing it, the organizations that I work with where that attitude prevails. And I call it, or actually Al Jarreau, the late Al Jarreau called it the jazz attitude. What is the jazz attitude? It's the idea of being open to each and every moment as a chance to create something different. Man, when I walk into an organization where the jazz attitude is prevalent, you can feel that. You can feel that in your bones, in your heart. People are walking around with a spring in their step. They're joyful. They have smiles. There's laughter. I was once working in an organization and we were having a great time. And somebody poked their head in and said, "Hey, you're laughing too loud. Keep it down." True story. And you can imagine what happened after that. Everybody just, man, you could just feel the energy leak out of the room like a balloon. I try to be receptive and to be listening and to not be afraid to try something. That's it. That's what Bobby McFerrin was talking about. Fearless. Move forward into the future. People want to share their ideas, but so often they're stifled at the source. And it's bad for the employee, it's bad for the manager, and it's bad for the organization. Now let's put this jazz attitude to the test. I'd like a volunteer to come up, please, and join me. Who would be willing to come up? Someone's volunteering somebody else. Okay, come on. Give her a round of applause. Hello, you are Missy. All right, come on over, Missy. Now, do you know what this is? This? Take a guess. No idea? It's called a percussion rack or a percussion tree. And as you can see, it's a metal stand basically with all kinds of things hanging off it that I like to play when I'm not out front singing or playing the saxophone. Have you ever tried one before?
No.
Do you play the drums or anything like that?
No.
Perfect. All right, why don't you give it a shot and just see if it works. Remember the jazz attitude, right? Give her a round of applause. Wow, pretty good, right? She's definitely living the jazz attitude. Okay, but we're going to make things a little harder now. And I would suggest Missy coming kind of center and a little closer. It won't bite you. Okay, now, Missy and I are going to engage in a completely spontaneous jazz exploration. I don't know what she's going to play, and she doesn't know what I'm going to play, but we're going to try to embrace Bobby McFerrin's theory or notion of forward movement. You want to stop, you desperately want to stop, but you don't stop. You keep going. And Al Jarreau's jazz attitude, being open to possibilities and really listening to what might emerge in the moment. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Wait. Oh, you're very kind. You're very kind. I guess if you're into like the avant-garde thing, that was awesome, right? But I don't know. How'd you feel? Did you feel that we had the jazz attitude there? I think you did. What about me?
I think you did. I don't think I did.
Well, I appreciate that, but I don't know, man. I think I was trying to do what? What was I trying to do? Huh? Trying too hard? Yeah. What was I doing? Overpowering her. Yeah, I wasn't at all interested in her musical expression. I was just trying to get my point across as forcefully and loudly as possible. I apologize. I'm sorry. You want to try that again? Because I think that was really on me. So I'm gonna try to embrace the jazz attitude, because it's not about me. It's about collaboration and co-creating in the moment and listening and balancing, and that can really be a joyful experience. So you ready to try that again? Okay. Let me get a little closer to you here. All right. Let's see what we can do, Missy. All right, why don't you start? So how did that feel, Missy? How did that feel?
Good.
All right, good. Oops. Tell me a little bit more. Was there a difference between round 1 and round 2?
Yeah, we were playing together.
Playing together. Okay, yeah. Did you notice a difference between round 1 and round 2? Can anybody shout out something that you saw that was different? What's that? Eye contact. Good. Yeah, eye contact, right? The eyes are the window to the soul. A lot more eye contact. Good. What else? Yeah, smile, right? This is creative expression is supposed to be fun, joyful. What did I do differently? Because I think I was the main culprit in round 1. What did I do differently? Yeah, I listened to her. I tried to start that rhythm that you started with. Remember that? It was just kind of a, yeah, right? Right? She was playing those 16th notes, and I was like, hey, that's kind of swinging, right? And so I tried to play something that matched hers. Now, granted, you may not run out and buy that record, right? But you can see it's such a different experience. And one of the challenges that I would give to you is think about how you show up at work. Are you more the, that? Or are you more the, right? Yeah, good. Okay, so that's one lesson that we can take away with regard to change. Thank you, Missy. Thank you very much. Yes. The jazz attitude. So, I know that some folks are a little squirrely about leaning into that space, and I grant you, it can be a little scary, especially if you're the kind of person that likes things very, like the orchestra, very meticulous, very precise, very methodical, very linear, very predictable. I get it. I know plenty of people like that. But I think the challenges of the modern era are going to require something a little different from us. So you don't have to just turn on a light switch and change, but I would encourage you to kind of lean into that space, and I think you'll find it's a really kind of a cool place to hang out. All right? So let's talk about the second C. That was change. We're going to talk about creativity. You know, this is a hard lesson for folks because when we're young, we don't know from mistakes. We're too busy, what? Huh? Yeah, playing, exploring, experimenting, getting down on the ground and, eye to eye with nature, or digging in the mud for who knows why. We just do it because it's fun to do, or mom told us not to splash in a puddle, so what do? We did it anyway. The heck with mom. See, it wasn't about making mistakes. It was about freedom. It was about that liberating feeling of being a kid. How many of you remember that feeling? Yeah. Then something happened. Something happened that all of us in this room experienced. Huh? What happened? We all went to school. And in school, we quickly learned that it wasn't about having fun and playing and experimenting and exploring. It was about getting the right answer. We quickly learned that some answers are righter than others. And so thus began a slow slide to conformity. And when things went wrong, as they sometimes do, we would start to blame others and point fingers and throw people under the bus. We came up with all of these really colorful, expressions. Somebody once said the most exercised part of the human body in corporate America is the index finger. We exercise the heck out of that digit, don't we, right? And so pretty soon, the notion of making a mistake or, God forbid, failure becomes an opportunity for us to humiliate others and belittle others and make them feel bad, right? And if you've ever been on the receiving end of something like this, maybe not literally, but metaphorically, when you made a mistake, you know how that feels. You know how that feels. Doesn't feel good. Now, what's interesting about jazz as opposed to the orchestra is that when we make a mistake, we step right into that space. We lean into that space. Why? Because that mistake in that moment can lead us into a bold, new creative direction that we wouldn't have pursued had we not made that mistake. Now, I know that sounds kind of funny, right? That's not the way we're accustomed to thinking at work. But I think it's so critical to high-performance teams, and I've seen it. They handle inevitable mistakes differently than run-of-the-mill average teams. Now, here's Herbie Hancock. How many of you know Herbie Hancock? Yeah, okay. I love this clip, and I've played it dozens and dozens of times over the years. Now, check this out. He's going to talk about an incident where he played a wrong chord when he played in Miles Davis's band back in the 60s. Miles Davis, as brilliant as he was kind of a tough cookie. Not the nicest guy, okay? Listen to Herbie recollect that moment and see if there's a learning lesson for us here.
And so right in the middle of Miles' solo, when he was playing one of his amazing solos, and I'm trying, I'm in there and I'm playing. Right in the middle of his solo, I played the wrong chord. A chord that it just sounded completely wrong. It sounded like a big mistake. And I did this and I went, oh, like this. And then I put my hands around my ears. And Miles paused for a second. And then he played some notes that made my chord right. He made it correct, which astounded me. I couldn't believe what I heard. Miles was able to make something that was wrong into something that was right, with the power of the choice of notes that he made and the feeling that he had. And so I couldn't play for about a minute. I couldn't even touch the piano. But what I realize now is that Miles didn't hear it as a mistake. He heard it as something that happened, just an event. And so that was part of the reality of what was happening at that moment. And he dealt with it. He found something that, since he didn't hear it as a mistake, he felt it was his responsibility to find something that fit. And he was able to do that. That taught me a very big lesson about not only music, but about life. We can look for the world to be as we would like it to be as individuals, make it easy for me, that idea. We can look for that. But I think the important thing is that we grow. And the only way we can grow is to have a mind that's open enough to be able to accept situations, to be able to experience situations as they are and turn them into medicine, turn poison into medicine. Take whatever situation you have and make something constructive happen with it. That's what I learned from that situation with Miles.
Totally different way of thinking than typical mentality when it comes to making mistakes. Now you might be thinking, well, that's one thing in a jazz context, but Mike, making a mistake at work, Okay, but we have to recognize that we're all human, and we may not make mistakes because we want to make mistakes. It's just we're imperfect beings. And so this is so important. The great Miles, man, he said, when you hit a wrong note, it's the next note that makes it good or bad. When you hit a wrong note, it's the next note that makes it good or bad. And I think of that as a metaphor. Yes, when you hit a wrong note during a solo, it's what you play next. For example, if I played a familiar melody and then made an obvious mistake. Then I make it obvious to the audience that, hey, that guy just made a mistake. But what I learned from Herbie and Miles that, okay, I made a mistake. What can I do with it? What can I learn from it? Can I allow it to take me in an unpredictable direction? Maybe it sounds something like this. Right? You know, there was an obvious mistake there. I played a G sharp instead of a G natural, and Mary had a little lamb. And I thought to myself, taking a cue from Herbie, okay, what do I do with this G sharp? I played the G sharp. There ain't no going back. And it sent me in this totally, different direction. Maybe it was good, maybe it was lousy. I don't know. But I didn't get hung up over it. In fact, Harvard Business Review a few years ago came out with an edition that was completely dedicated to failure. And I want you to note here, it says how to understand it, learn from it, and recover from it. Not how to belittle people, humiliate people, and make them feel like idiots. Now, there are certain mistakes that we might categorize as intolerable. Yes, because I know what you're all thinking, right? What about those really egregious mistakes that are the result of incompetence or apathy? Yes, those are not the mistakes I'm talking about. I'm talking about mistakes or failures that are the result of pursuing something new. You know what? You fell a little short of the mark. That's okay. What did we learn from it? Let's put some stopgaps in place to make sure it doesn't happen again, and we're going to be even better for having done it. I'm not happy we had a mistake, but let's turn that wrong note into something right. That's the jazz attitude. That's the jazz mentality. Now, there's something else that I beg you to be careful of at work. How many of you remember RAID? They still have RAID, right? The insect, right? Kills bugs dead. It used to be, and maybe it still is, their tagline, that little cartoon roach on its back. Killer phrases don't kill bugs dead. They kill everything you're looking for in your team, at your organization, dead. Motivation, morale, trust, loyalty. What is a killer phrase, you ask? A killer phrase is something that we say sort of instinctively that shuts down a new idea. History is full of these so-called killer phrases. And I'd like to share a few with you so you know what I'm talking about. Who the blank wants to hear actors talk? Harry Warner of Warner Brothers Pictures, when? In 1927. What was the prevailing paradigm at the time with regard to movies? Silent films. Mr. Warner thought silent films was the be-all and end-all of cinema. When the technology to add sound came about, he went, no one's interested. Little short-sighted. I'm glad no one listened to his killer phrase. How about, we don't like the sound, we don't like their sound and guitar music's on the way out. Oops. Probably want to have that one back, right? Because if you think about the late 50s, early 60s, we had a lot of Motown, which I love, but along come these four guys from Liverpool with the funny haircuts singing I Want to Hold Your Hand, and this guy was like, nah, man. What's that all about? And then they became the Beatles. There's no reason anyone would want a computer in their home. Really? Ken Olsen, president, chairman, and founder of Digital Equipment Corp. in 1977. Not sure whatever happened to Digital Equipment Corp., but I can tell you they're not around any longer. And finally, there will never be a bigger plane built, said the Boeing engineer after the first flight of the Boeing 347, a twin-engine plane that held 10 people. You know, folks, if we listen to the killer phrases around us, we're really doing ourselves and our teams and our constituents and our stakeholders a disservice. I mean, heck, if we still, if we listened to people's killer phrases over the years, we'd still be using these mobile phones. Remember those? We'd still be using these tablets. And when we were bored at work, and you know who you are, you'd still be doing this. Fortunately, technology has evolved, and there's much more interesting ways to waste time at work. So after this moment, ladies and gentlemen, I never want to hear these killer phrases come out of your mouths or the mouths of your colleagues ever again. Are you ready? Drum roll, please. Number 6. Get rid of it. Number 5. I know what you're thinking. But Mike, often it's really not in the budget. To which I might reply, what? Huh? If it's a good enough idea, find a way. Or at the very least, forget about the budget. Put that aside. We'll worry about the budget later. If you come out of the gate going, it's not in the budget, you have basically stamped down an idea or stomped down an idea that never had a chance to what? To grow, to flourish, to be heard. So if you come out saying, it's not in the budget, if you're creative, maybe, and it's a good enough idea, maybe you find a way to do it. So I challenge you not to use, it's not in the budget. That will stomp out more creative ideas than you can imagine. Number 4, let me hear you. Was that you guys? That was amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, if now's not the right time, when is the right time, man? Right? Now's the time. Now's the time to do something bold and fun and interesting that's going to make your constituents go, oh, incredible. How about number 3? Get rid of it. Oh, you tried that once before? When did you try that? Oh, I don't know, 1990. Is it worth revisiting? Is there a nugget in that idea? Maybe 90% of it didn't work, but is there a 10% gem in there that's worth re-examining? Number 2. What is with the committees? Committees are where great ideas go to die, ladies and gentlemen. Nowadays, they create committees to discuss whether or not they should create a committee. It's the weirdest thing I've ever done. And number 1, big drum roll, please. Please. Take a picture of it, memorize it. I'm going to come to all your teams, and if I hear any of these killer phrases, I'm going to be very upset. But you can see how killer phrases stomp out potentially good ideas. It may require a shift in mindset, and that's the challenge. Okay? We've talked about 2 C's so far, change and creativity, and our final C is communication. Communication. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place, said the great Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw. And I think you probably know what we're talking about here. Right? If you've ever had a meeting or given some instructions to somebody or given some directions to somebody, and they come back the next day and they go, here, Mike, here's what you wanted. And I go, great, I'm so glad you worked on it overnight. Thank you so much. What the hell is this, right? The illusion that communication had taken place, right? I guess I misunderstood what you meant by writing cursive. There's a miscommunication there, right? And that is why we lift on 3. That's that one, right? And my favorite, communication within the company is really bad according to this report. And why wasn't I told about this? Now, you got stuff like this. I mean, if you were driving by that sign, you'd be lying to me if you said I wouldn't take a second look at that, right? See, because English is a funny language. I can only talk about English. It's the only language I know. But built into English is some really funky, funny stuff. Because this church didn't mean we love hurting people. They meant, we love people who are hurting. Why? Because we welcome them to our congregation and we can give them the love and the support they need, right? If your dog does a poo, please put it in the litter bin. Uh-oh. Someone took that a little too literally. You know, the opportunity for miscommunication and misinterpretation is everywhere, all around us. Sometimes even a comma can save someone's life. If you're a grandpa, you're going to be mighty pleased that that comma was in the statement. Now, I want you to think about the ambiguous words and phrases you use every day, which before this moment, you never even really thought about. Phrases and words like the ones appearing on the screen. And there's nothing inherently wrong with using these words and phrases, but I would submit to you that they can cause some miscommunication, the illusion that communication has taken place. I won't run through all these, but let's take the first one. ASAP stands for? Now, what could possibly be wrong with using ASAP as soon as possible? Huh? I heard someone say it. What happens if it's not possible? That's true. That's true. Where else can we run into trouble with a simple phrase like ASAP? Yeah. What's your name? Andy? I say to Andy, no problem, Andy, I'm going to get right on it as soon as possible. He thinks I mean the end of the day. I mean by the end of the week, and it's only Monday morning. I meant 5 minutes. Oh, and he meant 5 minutes. There you go, right? He knocks on my door. Hey, Mike, where's the report? I go, it's not ready. You said you'd have it ASAP. Yeah. Well, it's time to go home. I need it. That's not ASAP. I'm not going to be able to even look at that until midweek. Okay? All of these create ambiguity in your workplace. Soon, I don't know what that means. Right away, next 5 minutes, next 10 minutes, next day. Try, should, around, could. You need to be attuned to this language going forward, because if an employee says to you, yeah, I should be able to get to, right? Hold on a second, because what happens in vagueness stays in vagueness, ladies and gentlemen. If your communication is inherently ambiguous and vague and easy to, it's going to stay there, okay? And I do, full day seminars on communication, and this is one of the fundamental things that we talk about, and it trips people up. Okay? The reason it can be so pernicious and dangerous is because it leads to excuses. It's super easy for somebody to say, oh, you wanted that at the end of the day? I had no idea. Or, you wanted me to do that? I thought Jill was supposed to do. When you're not clear, it leads to excuses. And that's the thing we can least afford these days. Accountability is hot right now. Or so the kids tell me, right? Accountability is in, man, right? We want teams where people say, like, yep, I'm on it, and they deliver it. They're reliable and dependable, and they own the results of their actions and behaviors. Not a bunch of, wimpy excuses. And it starts with clear messaging, clear communication. Now, extending the jazz theme we've established tonight, how many of you know Louis Armstrong, the great Louis Armstrong? Yep, okay, that's my best Louis Armstrong. But I want you to check out how crystal clear his tone is and the ideas that he's expressing. They're not complicated, they're not convoluted, they're simple, they're precise, and they're bang. There's just no ambiguity about them. So here's Louis playing with the great Duke Ellington. man, right? Phenomenal. Just every idea, right, boom, right where it's supposed to be. Not a note out of place. So I think it's a great metaphor for us to think about how we communicate, right, with that same sort of crystal clear intent. And it's not something, that you can immediately, start tomorrow if you're thinking, gee, maybe my communication could be a little clearer. But it is something for us to strive for. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I still, speak in vagueness sometimes. Very recently, I agreed on the phone to have a meeting with a friend of mine at a local Starbucks. And I said to this person, hey, we'll meet at the same one as last time. Yeah, sure. I go to downtown Philadelphia, and I'm sitting in this Starbucks, and I'm waiting, and 10 minutes have gone by, and 15 minutes have gone by, now 20 minutes have gone by, and I'm wondering, where the heck is my friend? My friend calls, and he says, where are you? Maybe some of you can identify with this little mishap. I said, where am I? Where are you? He said, I'm at the Starbucks at, X and Y. I said, oh my God. I'm at the completely wrong Starbucks, clear across town. See, I meet, pre-pandemic especially, I would meet people at Starbucks or, all the time. That was kind of my home away from home, where I did work. And because I went to so many Starbucks, I forgot the last one we went to. Had I just taken another 10 seconds to go, and just to be sure, that's at, 7th and Arch, right? I'm the one that looked foolish. I'm the one that ended up wasting his time. So I learned, ask questions, be clear in my communication, and take a page from Louis, right? Because sometimes what we think we're giving other people is landing like this. And we start labeling, he never listens, or what's the matter with her? Does she have an issue or something? No, it's just we perceive things differently. And sometimes, our messaging could be clearer. So when we're making requests or providing feedback or setting expectations or outlining plans and strategies, whatever you do in your role, remember Louis Armstrong and the crystal clear tone and the simple but powerful ideas, right? Just a few notes got that message across with no ambiguity. Something else you can start asking, especially at the end of meetings, who will do what by when? Have you ever left a meeting and looked at each other and go, I have no idea what we're supposed to do now. Is that your job? Is that what I'm supposed to do? That? If you take 30 seconds at the end of a meeting, go, okay, folks, before we wrap up, who will do what by when? Let me hear you. No good. Let me hear you. Who will do what by when? I guarantee you it's going to save you so much aggravation down the line. You're going to be crystal clear on which tasks are supposed to be done when and by whom. Super simple. None of this stuff is rocket science, folks. Following up with questions. This is the stuff I teach my grad students. Are my directions clear? Have I left anything out? What questions do you have? What is your understanding of what I'm requesting? You don't have to read this like a script, but simply asking those questions because, right? Sometimes we think we're being super clear and we're just not. We're not being as clear as we think we are. And that goes for your rotten emails too. Now, some of you in the audience are going, what's wrong with that email? I read a statistic, ladies and gentlemen, that said the average American gets about 150 emails a day. And some of you may be thinking, a day? I get that by 9 a.m. Okay. If you receive this email from somebody, where would that go? Be honest, where? The trash, or at least where? Yeah, you know what? I'll get to that later today, and you're not going to get it later today. So watch the length and ambiguity and complexity of your emails. Written and spoken communication. Laser focused, laser sharp, Louis Armstrong style. So I've given you a lot of things to think about, how high performance teams play in harmony, drawing from the world of jazz and looking at how some famous jazz musicians think about the 3 C's. Do you remember the 3 C's? What was the first one? Change. What was the second one? What was the third one? And so now I'd like you to take 5 minutes at your table and process this content What will you now consider doing differently regarding the 3 C's? I'm not looking for 20 things. One thing that inspired you, one thing that led you to go, you know what, I could probably do a better job of that. One thing when you go back and work with your teammates after this conference, go, okay, folks, we're going to try something a little new around here. Let's see how it works. Whatever that is for you, go ahead and share at your table. Go. Okay, Alan, I'm going to ask you to get the handhelds going. Check, 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 check. All right. This is what's known as crowd work, ladies and gentlemen. Crowd work. Who would be willing to share one takeaway from tonight's presentation? Are you volunteering this young man? Is that what's going on here? How do you feel about that? You feel okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, our first volunteer. Let's give him a round of applause. What's your name?
Hank.
Hank, what's one takeaway regarding the 3 C's that you derived from this presentation tonight?
We realized we should always play John Coltrane solos before we have a meeting.
Okay, I love it. Let's give him a round of applause. Now, why would you do that? What will that provide you and your team?
Creativity, of course.
Excellent answer. He was listening. Wonderful, thank you. Who else would be willing to share one takeaway regarding the 3 C's from tonight? We have my lovely assistant over there. I'm back here. Don't be shy, you're all family here, right? Something that you took away, an idea. Oh, thank you. I'm gonna make my way over here. All right. What's your name?
Beth.
Beth, give it up for Beth. Ow, ow, ow. All right, Beth, what do you got for us?
Stop using killer phrases.
Ah, okay. Are you a killer phrase user?
I used to be. I do it a lot less, but I entertain it, and I need to stop entertaining it.
Love it. We had some real transformation here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Let's hear it for Beth. All right, how about one more? Front of the room, back of the room. Oh, perfect.
We want to make sure our emails are clear and concise. I feel very defensive sometimes when we're writing emails, and take that out and just make it clear and concise.
Did you say you feel defensive?
Yes, when someone's asking a question or why didn't this go this way, I feel we have to explain why it should be this way, and they don't want to hear it, and I shouldn't have to give it.
Okay.
And I want to be clear and concise, and yes,
yeah.
Nice short email.
Nice, short, crystal clear, Louis Armstrong style email. I love it. Excellent. All right. And by the way, a little bonus tip, never respond to an email when you're in a foul mood. No good. How many of you have ever gotten an email that sort of like triggered you a little bit? And you were like, type, reply to all. And then sat back with a smug smile for about 2 minutes before you realized, maybe I shouldn't have sent that email. Yeah. So that's a whole other presentation, but you got to make some space and come back after you take some time and come back. You got to allow your emotional brain, which is now white hot, to reside or to come down, and allow your thinking rational brain to take over. Because when your emotional brain is running things, how many of you can say like, yes, I'm always at my best? Not so much. A bonus tip. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you play the right chords. I want to thank all of you for coming, for listening to what I wanted to share with you. It comes from a place of appreciation and admiration. And I hope that this was useful and will inspire you maybe to think a little differently, whether you like jazz or not. That's not the point, okay? And I'd like to thank these two wonderful people for having me here tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. I'll be hanging out in the back if you want to take a picture of me and the saxophone, you know, for whatever reason. And pretty soon I'm going to be having my first book coming out. It's called Strike the Right Chord, The Emerging Leader's Guide. The Emerging Leader's Guide to Exceptional Performance. So look for that, and if you'd like to connect with me in any way, this is my information, LinkedIn, email, website. Thank you, have a great conference, everybody.